We're live, everybody. John Lavenia Success Mastermind general session for our mastermind group, 14th of June, 2022, with the great man himself, John, in person in the room. So very pleased to see him, and fellow Tuesday contributor Stuart, part of Team Tuesday. Great to see him as always. Great to see him as always. Anyway, housekeeping wise, very simple. I believe I'm right in saying no sessions tonight. So the next session is tomorrow, general session. Then we've got the book club coming up with Mandy usually this week. Always a good one to look forward to. So without further ado, I will launch into today's discussion. As you might remember, just to recap, we've been going through what I've tried to filter out from the last 2 years of our discussions and work out the sort of things that seem to come up again and again as being pretty crucial to achieving our objectives and achieving the success we're all looking for. So that's what I've been saying. We started off, and I'll just pull my list up so I don't forget anything crucial, but we started off with routine and habit. In other words, how important it is to have baked into our day as part of our waking mindset that we have a routine and that we make those things habitual, just like we do taking the right vitamins in the morning, building our exercise into our day, whatever it is. Those things, without those, that is our chassis. Without that discipline that we build, and we don't have to have it on day one, but we've got to work towards achieving it. A lot of us have learned the hard way that we can have fantastic grand designs and schemes and thoughts, but if we don't regularly implement those actions and allow time for them, we're not going to get anywhere. And how many times have we all lived to regret that when we get the calendar out and say, crumbs, it's December. What happened to the year? All that time I was going to allow just didn't materialize. So we started off talking about the routine and making things habitual. So we build in to every day or the planned days, the functions that we now actually relate to what it is we're trying to achieve, which sounds funny, but again, we can end up doing a whole load of things in our routine and as part of our habit base that don't actually get us towards the end goal. So we've gone through that. That's crucial. Passion and desire, we talked about trying to make sure that we're in the right mental state and that we're vibrating, as Stuart would put it, to a high enough level that we're putting out the energy needed just to keep going and getting forward, which is tough, especially on a bad day. Again, positivity and belief, the third thing that was linked to that. How do we stay positive in the face of adversity and consciously sweep away negative people and negative thoughts before they get to us? Which, again, is a very important part of this. We want to help people, we want to be there for them, but we can't solve all their problems, and we can't let everybody take all of our time away. We have to keep some of it for ourselves. We owe it to ourselves, to our families, to our communities, in trying to achieve what we're doing, to keep some of that time and that energy for ourselves. So we talked about that as well. And then probably John's favorite subject, taking action. We talked as the fourth element about actually taking action. Not only we've got to have a routine where we allow things to potentially happen, we've got to do something about them. We have to actually get out there and say, I'm having a go, and not get held back, hesitate, wait, as I often say, for perfect weather, which will never arrive. We've got to launch our boat, sometimes on rough seas, go out in rough weather and do something. So we talked about that. And then we talked about obstacles latterly, how to deal with obstacles and the kind of mindset we need to get forward in the face of obstacles, which can, if we allow them to, build into a mountain or an apparently impenetrable barrier. So that brings us on really today to talking about networking, and link closely to that, giving people what they actually want, because we've concentrated so far on our own mindset, on how we view obstacles, how we take action, how we build routines. We've got to look outside as well and say what actually differentiates people that succeed and get somewhere from people that apparently haven't got very far. And it's clear, and Glenn talks about that in his sessions, that we have to be good at networking, which does not come to some of us very easily. We don't feel comfortable about doing it, but we've got to start somewhere. And we'll come on to that in a few minutes in a bit more detail, but we must be prepared to engage, come out of our comfort zone, especially if we're introvert people, and decide we're going to engage, We're going to talk, we're going to build relationships, build communities, build tribes, if we're talking about a business, who are people prepared to follow us and talk to us, buy things from us, help us, and engage with us. So we know that this is important, and I'm afraid it's something that can be uncomfortable, particularly if you've never done it before, but you can. The great news is you can get over that. Practice, get out there. It suddenly doesn't seem so bad the more you do it. Giving people what they want, closely associated with that. Are we actually focused enough? And we'll come back onto this, on making sure we're offering people what they actually want, not what we want to give them. Again, seems trite, seems very simple, but how many of us really focus on that enough and really decide that we've gone out and found out what we think we're offering versus what people actually want us to offer, and whether that meets their objectives. So takes me back to 2 earlier discussions we've had. They're all in the recordings, one of which focused on the fact that we are a marketplace, and the other one focused on the customer value proposition, which you'll find in the life and business tool sessions, and which I'll come on to at a high level in a minute. So the first element is, don't forget, every entrepreneur, every person trying to meet an objective is a marketplace. So we are literally setting up our stall in an imaginary farmer's market and piling it up with our cheese and saying, come to my stall and buy my cheese, rather than go to the next stall. How are we going to achieve that? We've got to be that focused. If we're an employee, we're still a marketplace. We're selling something to an employer. We're a service provider. We're selling a service to a customer. If we're a product provider, we're selling our product. Stewart's Bath Bomb, for example, we're selling that to a customer, and we have to do that in a way which is attractive to them. We are the marketplace in everything we do. We're even a marketplace in our relationships with other people. They look at how we're coming across, they look at our stall and decide whether they like the look and feel and sound of it. And we've got to focus on those things to get what we actually want to achieve done. And the more effective we are at being a marketplace, recognizing that and creating these networks, the more effective and likely we are to succeed, to be quite frank. This literally is an imaginary marketplace where we're competing with other people, with other stalls and other ideas. We've got to go out there, not be afraid of being in that marketplace and being seen and waving our arms around and putting our banners up, but also not being unaware to the extent that we don't look at our stall and what we've put on it and how attractive it actually is and whether it's relevant to customers in that marketplace walking around that day. So the number of battles we've got to fight, but we have to focus on and get much better at these things to really succeed to a high level. Everyone can get some success, great, guaranteed. But if you want to break through a certain level, you've got to get really good at these 2-3 things to make this happen. So connecting with people, first of all, and then giving them the service or product they actually want, and then telling them about it, which comes back to all our marketing discussions. So I thought a great deal recently about this again, about the relationships we have as entrepreneurs and the impact these have. And I talked last year about the fact that for me, these relationships, these networks are what I called last year the secret sauce. They are a magic ingredient, and they really are what differentiates an entrepreneur or a business person with a business from a hobbyist or someone that's just casually engaged in some activity. If you want to make a living out of something, create a high level business or some service or something that's delivering to people on a wide scale, you have to be good at relationships. These differentiate somebody that's just turning up, taking money for doing 8 hours work, from somebody that's trying to run a whole concept service, change the world, meet their objective, change the area they're in, whatever it is they're targeting. And I really, again, can't stress this enough, how important this is. You look around you at all the businesses you know, look at the employees in those businesses and look at the owner and the entrepreneurs, and you will start to see the difference. The entrepreneur and the business owner is the person with the network who can pull the customers in and sell something, or give the sales team some people to sell to, whether through their charisma, the tribe they've created, or their personal contact network. It all comes down to that. That is why some people are in business and some people are not. So we're going to talk about being entrepreneurs perhaps today. That's what it's all about. The power of those relationships and what's involved in them, what's behind them is crucial. They matter. And again, can't recommend enough talking to Glenn, and on his network magic sessions, he focuses on this kind of thing, overcoming those hurdles, creating networks, how to create relationships, how to maintain relationships, how to fix relationships that have gone wrong. He's exhorted us to do that and to have a go at going back and say, can I fix that? Don't just let that relationship go. These relationships, by the way, from a cynical business point of view, are very expensive to create and expensive to get back. It'll cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially in marketing if you just keep churning and losing your relationships. You've got to build a permanent following and focus on it enough that those people will stick with you. So this really does matter from a purely cynical financial point of view, as well as from a personal point of view. But from a business point of view, it is the source and the fuel of your business. And every time you've got to go and replace this network or get it back, it costs you money and time, which you may not have, particularly when you get past a certain scale of operation. You're dealing with thousands and then tens and then hundreds of thousands of contacts that you've got to keep happy, maintain, and keep engaged and interested. And that is a skill we all have to build. So we've all also discussed on occasions, and John's discussed this with us, winning business after just creating perhaps a random positive contact. And Glenn's talked about this as well. We do something supposedly left field and random, create a great relationship, and then, hey presto, later down the road, a business relationship can come out of it. On one of these calls, on one of these general sessions, Edward dialed in after 20 years, not having spoken to John or seen him, but remembering a contact they'd had in another forum, which he had appreciated, which caused him 20 years later to bring business to John. And that's how much this can affect the results. If we focus on this and we really understand that it does matter and prioritize it, then it can bring you all sorts of feedback and results from somewhere you just never expected. You never know who it is that's going to bring you that blockbuster piece of business, that great idea, that great contact, or that great lift up to another level. You never know. Why then did that person contact John? Why did that person contact us years later? That's what you've got to explore. That's what you've got to understand. What was it that you did that was strong enough and powerful enough in that relationship to give it that sort of momentum and strength that they would come to you of their own volition without you forcing marketing down their throat to do something? Because marketing is only so successful. You've got to appeal to people, not force it down their throat. You've got to engage people. And this is where the network is powerful. You've got to create a following, people that actually want to talk to you, that want to hear what you have to say, that you're not forcing to listen to everything you have to say and twisting their arms behind their back. That doesn't tend to work beyond a certain point. John talks about sales often and about sales being the best paid profession in the world. Glenn, again, stresses the power of the network, because both of these are linked to relationship power and how you create them and how they can yield fruit for you for years and years and years. So we've got to manage them. We've got to nurture them. We've got to take that seriously. We have to, though, be prepared to positively reach out to people and really want to engage. And I've talked about that before as well. We can engage with people in a very surface way without really thinking about what they're saying, without opening our ears. We should listen and not speak. And this is one of the Greek philosophers that Stuart's certainly going to remind me of in a minute, that said that we've got to listen more than we speak. And we've got to mean the fact that we want to engage, that we want to really understand the person in front of us. So it's not surface, it's reaching out and actually intending to get through with intention, wanting to connect with someone and caring enough about them that we're finding out what they actually want and that we're causing them to want to come back to us in our network in the future. So this is heart and soul kind of stuff, which is why it's quite difficult to do it if it's not aligned with your burning desires, your principles, and your ideas. These things have to lock up generally. Yes, we can sell something cold, but it's hard work. And it's not the sort of business any of us, I don't think, on these forums are trying to create. We're trying to create businesses out of passion and burning desire and causing people to engage with us because they can feel that. So we're actually trying to contact people and convey to them our passion and get that across the airwaves to them so they can understand how passionate we are about what we do. They need to feel that we do care. They need to feel that we're really there. We're turning up, as John would say. We're actually present, correct, and there. And we intend to be, and we mean it. This is not just trite sales speak in a sales pack that we've been given as a script. Now, I know we have to have scripts, etc. The danger is we follow a script slavishly without question, and we don't know why we're saying these things. We've got to really mean it. This is not empty words, empty marketing, meaningless claims. And this also, by the way, applies to everything we write. Our flyers, our website, our social media. It all has to reflect how we would be in person on a call like this today with somebody. They've got to feel that you're communicating in an equivalent way in writing, not coldly with the sort of cold, distant language, which is not engaging them at all. So we've got to be so aware of this, We've got to be driven, in my view, by humanity, a real desire to connect with people, to learn about people, and want to hear what they have back to say to us in return. And this is about serving other people, back to the marketplace concept. We are serving other people in everything we do, in friendships, in marketplaces, selling things. As an employee, we're selling something. And we've got to really understand that if we're there for the time being, we're selling it. We have to really mean it. If we don't like what we're selling, then we make a change. It's probably time to change. But if we're doing it, meaning to do it, we've got to convey that. So this humanity-based mindset has got to be there behind all of this. But the listening and feeling is part of it. We've got to really be sensitive and build our sensitivity levels to hear what's coming back to us. And we certainly do this in the group. In our group, we do exactly that. We listen to what other people have got to say. We've learned a tremendous amount from that over the months. Well, I certainly have. Some of the stories that have been shared with us are very, very powerful. And people have really shared them because they want us to learn from that. And the sort of feedback I've seen from other people means they really care. And that makes the difference between a group like this and something that's just run-of-the-mill, cold, not really very effective. We are people, and that's another trite phrase, but we have to be people and really care. If we're having trouble as an introvert, we can train ourselves to, it's not that we don't care about people, we might have trouble expressing it. We might be uncomfortable expressing it. You've got to put yourself in role model positions, role play positions with someone you trust, perhaps, to start practicing doing that so you become more comfortable. And there's nothing like diving in at the deep end. I was chucked in at the deep end at a young age and sent off and told, you're going to make that speech tomorrow and you're going to do it. And believe me, once you've done it a few times, the fear goes away. You always get your psyche going. You always get psyched up to do these things, but the fear of it and the uncomfortableness goes to an extent and transforms. We have to do it. We just have to do it and get out there. We've got to replicate the sort of sentiments you might have felt, hopefully, in this group when we do business with people and create this network I've been talking about. And just imagine the business power that will create for you if you can replicate the feelings you've had in this group, in your own tribe, in your own group. It really will change everything. But sharing, I've said before, is important. We've actually got to want to share something. Every relationship is built on sharing something and getting something back. It's not one way. We've got to give something of ourselves. We've got to invest in the other person to create a really meaningful network, whether that's a business network or a personal network. But certainly in a business network, we've got to give something back. We've got to put something in. We shouldn't just sit there expecting something back because we're owed that right. It's not an entitlement. People won't give you something for nothing unless they really want to engage with you and do something for you and pay you something. So we shouldn't have an entitlement mindset. We should have a sharing mindset where we build on sharing and giving and taking, reaching out, identifying people's needs, investing in them and understanding them. Positive thought behind that, positive effort required, really deliberately doing it, deliberately, not accidentally, not passively, deliberately planning to do it and being aware. This requires massive antenna and alertness level that we've got to practice again so that we hear what's happening around us and we respond to it. Mindfulness, being in the moment, being really present right now in the now, not just saying later, gosh, yes, that's interesting. When they said that, what did they really mean by that? But not asking them at the time, not being aware of it at the time. Being in the moment is particularly crucial, tuning in, listening, and seeing the person. And I said this in a previous discussion, I see you. I really see you as a customer, a client, a contact, a network participant. I see you and I understand you. That's what I'm trying to convey here. And are we really all doing those things as much as we should be? Are we focusing on them as much as we should be? That really brings me on to the second theme, and I don't want to ramble on for too long, and please stop me if anyone wants to jump in. But I think we've also talked before about the customer value proposition, which was a more business-orientated discussion, but it really does apply to what I'm saying about our mindset and our general mastermind approach to succeeding in our objectives. So what we're looking to do here is to actually assess what it is that our proposition actually is and why it works for people and whether it's relevant to them. And there's a whole recording on this in the Life and Business Tools library. The Met Labs Institute I referred to previously said the definition of the term is a value proposition is the answer to the question, if I am your ideal prospect, why should I buy from you rather than any of your competitors? That's how they summed it up. Is we're floating an offering out on an ocean of offerings with an ocean of competitors and an ocean of people looking at those competitors. So we're trying to be relevant to people and saying, this is why you should come to me. This is what I'm doing for you that's relevant to you. And I've worked out what it is you want. And I'm telling you, this is relevant to you. And here's why. And that's where your avatar comes in, really understanding your single or bunch of avatars that you think you're selling to and what it is they really want. So this value proposition, giving people what they actually want, so easy just to unconsciously drift along in business for years, selling the same old thing and then suddenly finding your market's gone because you've become irrelevant or you always were. And things have moved on and you just never really bothered to find out what it was your customers thought you were doing for them. And that sounds very odd again, but there are examples all over the internet of case studies where, for example, an estate agent chain thought they were selling houses in one way, and then it turned out the customers weren't interested in saving money. They wanted the best deal and the best price and the best service. And yes, a great fee, but they actually were focused on something the estate agent was not focused on. This is so easy as a trap to fall into. We always constantly have to look at what we're doing and say, is this relevant? Is this actually right? And this is very logical, and I hope it makes sense. So, in other words, customer value proposition, giving people what they want, it's entirely outward looking. It's not inward looking to us. It's not inward looking to the extent that we get tied up in what our own team is telling us, what our own advisors are telling us, because they're just going to reinforce often what they think we want to hear and what we've always heard before or what it is they can do for us. We can so easily get in this bubble vacuum where that's all we hear. We don't break through the outer bubble, pierce it and say, what is outside that bubble in the minds of the people that are listening to us, that we're trying to sell things to? So we've got to explain why we think our product is great for that particular person, why it matters to them. Why does it matter to them? Why should they care about it? Someone's talked about this before. Why should they care is a key point in this discussion about giving people what they want. If we can't answer that question, why they should care sufficiently about what we're doing, we are nowhere and we're unlikely to really engage with people. You know, this means we've got to be brave enough to say, crumbs, we've got to perhaps change our whole messaging, change our whole pitch, re-pivot our business to something slightly different, because maybe we just haven't hit the mark and we haven't tested that properly. We know there are many, many examples of this, as I've said. So really, what can we do? We can do many, many things, but we've got a few clear components. We've got to understand what the customer wants, what the problem is the customer is seeking the solution for, and what is their need, what is their wish that they're trying to fill. So we know what that is. We've talked many times about this. We can use surveys for this. We can use customer ratings, reviews from other people, email campaigns, testing through our PPC click campaigns. We've gone through those things many, many times in our technical sessions on various forums in the mastermind group. So go back to that. There are ways of testing this. Then we can look at the competition too. Yes, don't reinvent the wheel. Go and look at what they're doing and try and understand why they're doing it, why that's relevant to those customers, or why in the reviews they're saying it's not relevant to them and they don't like it, and then improve on it. So this is something, luckily, we can actually do something about. And I probably will suspend at that point and take questions from the floor. There's so much more we could say on the customer value proposition. That's probably for another day's technical session, trying to tweak our product, give some extra value, including an experience in the value, including some knowledge, some free giveaways, making it easier to use, the quality of it, the luxury feel of it, the exclusivity. All of these things are tools we can use, but they're all related to this question of, am I giving people what they want? And then how do I convince them to engage? But if we haven't already decided that we know what they want, we can use as many marketing tools as we want, but we're shooting arrows all around the target. And we're not necessarily firing those arrows towards the target in the first place. So a tool, a marketing tool, a script, it's a great thing and we need it, but the message and the product and the service and our mission has to be right in the first place. So that goes along with the networking I talked about. And to me, those things are massively important and significant in our journey. So I'd love to open the floor. Hope I haven't left people nonplussed and that struck a chord. That I'd love to hear what you all do about this, either on the networking side and or on the giving people what they want side. Anyone have any ideas? Hey, John.
I got an idea.
Great.
I just had a conversation with a group of marketers about about the difference between one-to-many and one-to-one sales. And the theme that came up for me was when I'm in a, let's say I'm hosting a webinar, which I'm apparently good at. I've made a lot of money doing webinars, but the tendency for people to individuate or to separate themselves from, well, he's talking to other people, he's not talking to me. In other words, the assumption that they're an outsider looking in, which is how everybody starts, right? I mean, all of us were strangers at one point, right? So that connection, being able to create that connection and have someone understand that you're talking to them is huge. Now, it's more difficult to do one-to-many than it is to do one-to-one. But I would venture that a lot of people here, like I know, for example, Stuart has a a thing he's working on now that is more one-to-one. So I think you start and if you can kind of survey the scene and really get in communication with somebody about what's important to them, what's real for them, what's going to move the needle in their life, what's their problem according to them. They might be wrong, but according to them, right? That's their reality. Okay. So then if you can get into that conversation, which is already happening with that ideal customer, you mentioned, customer avatar, stuff like that. Well, then there's a lot less convincing needed. And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up with, how do I get my product to market, or how do I get my stuff, in front of somebody who's willing to buy it? The communication line hasn't been established quite often, right? And so, like you said, shooting arrows or, the message falling on deaf ears. And I've seen this all the time. Shannon and I run a branding and marketing agency, so we get to see lots of examples of just trash, poor messaging, no message to market match, and and a mystery on the part of the person wondering why they're not hooking up. So I'll just say one other thing on this as a real world, like present time example. So I've got an offer, shopping club offer. I work with this US based products manufacturer. They've been around decades. They're doing great, steady as she goes. And yet we're looking to, go vertical with some of this stuff and put it more into the marketplace, take more market share. So we crafted an offer around the product. The product hasn't changed, the same stuff, okay? But we crafted an offer around that appeals to a specific target audience. And this is one-to-many, but then it does filter down or funnel down into, one-to-one. But the public-facing offer has nothing to do with the product. it's a reason why someone would want to investigate further. It creates interest, but it doesn't satisfy interest. And it creates interest for who? For the person we're targeting. And there's lots of them. Okay, but that particular one, and there happens to be lots of that particular kind of person, is who we're communicating with about something that's already relevant to them. And they don't have any idea about products or, e-commerce or whatever. They just, we've got a common problem that we're addressing. The solution, which they have no idea what the solution could be, is what we'll enlighten them on once we get them in communication. But the only reason we're able to set up that communication line and have them be, willing to talk and listen and stuff is because we pressed a button that they had already revealed. Here's my button, right? So we're shooting at something known. Hopefully that makes sense. Thanks, Adrian, for all you do, brother. You're freaking brilliant.
John, that's very kind. As I always say, my head won't be able to fit in this Zoom room if you keep saying that. But John, that's very powerful. And that's exactly why this is so important. We can get all our mindsets straight, have our mastermind sessions, get really enthusiastic, get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, read the Miracle Morning, etc. But we've got to bolt this on to be effective and transition to being a business person. We've got to get good at this. And as you're saying, finding out what matters to that person is what matters to that person. We may disagree with it, we may not quite understand it, but we've got to try and understand what it is that the people we're selling to actually want and decide if we can deliver it. If we can't deliver it, we're not in the right market, or the product's wrong, we've got to start again. It's like, to me, John, it's like a song. I could play 10 tracks to you right now in this forum. Some of you will particularly attune to one of those tunes and others not, and that it'll be your favorite track. So you strike a chord with people literally like a piece of music. I just will hear a piece of music and wow, that's just amazing, and I'll keep playing it again and again because it's appealed to me. It's in my innermost person, it's aligned with me. This is what we're trying to do. We are singing a song to people or playing a piece of music to them, which we're really trying to engage them in so that they want to hear it. And as John's just said, that is so powerful and so important that even if the offering behind it's not yet clear, the solution, in other words, they're going to listen to you anyway and engage with you sufficiently to have that, for you to have that discussion. So that's very powerful, John, that it's so important that they don't even know what the solution is yet behind it, but they're still going to listen to you, is why this matters and how powerful it actually is. So John, that's a really great illustration, I think. Anyone else with any views on this? Stuart has posted resonance. Yeah, it is resonance. I agree, Stuart. And there is, in fact, a book called Resonate from memory about making presentations where somebody focused on the point that we can put up a whole lot of slides, PowerPoints, etc., which may convey a message, but they may not engage with anybody. Similar part of the same message. You've got to resonate and decide what is going to resonate and why, so you know what it is and you can do it. Resonate, strike a chord, connect. These are all the words you've heard today again and again and again. John's just said it again. Find out what matters to them. Find out what matters. Do your work. And I go on about this because I think it is the difference between you doing something meaningful and big scale and not. Oh, great. Linda's got a hand up. Lovely to hear from you.
Hey, Adrian, thank you.
Hey.
So what I'm getting from this is, I mean, there's many things, but listening to the person so that you can understand. And I was on a sales call with this woman and she was super excited to hear about what we had to offer. And halfway through the call, I found out that she was already a member. And I was like, oh, and then, but also just by listening to her and the conversation that we had, I knew that she would most likely be interested in the business side of this as well, which I knew personally I could not, she could not be part of my team, but I still needed to serve her and let her know that, this was there because she had no idea. So she was super excited, definitely was interested. I had to tell her that she had to get back with her enroller And yeah, because we all need, you know, a little extra money these days. And that was the message that I was getting from her, just because I was listening to understand where she was coming from. So
That's an absolutely great example, Linda, and I'm pleased you've highlighted it. I touched on this, but maybe not enough. We've got to have that level of emotional intelligence that our antenna are receiving the messages, and then they actually strike us, because it's easy to sit through a whole bunch of meetings with people and not really take in why they're saying these things. We're trying to find out, we're detectives here. I've learned more over the years about what I should be doing by meeting people that perhaps will never ever buy anything from me. But the things they say and the clues they give me by what they focus on mean that I then learn what it is I should be doing. And that's always worked. By getting out, they never know what someone's going to say. You think, I never knew that. I've never heard that before. Now, why are they worried about that? Why are they focused on that? Why are they talking in that way about what I'm trying to do? So you've really got to have that emotional intelligence that Linda's talking about to be able to think on the spur of the moment. Yeah, actually, wait a minute. That's interesting. Well, maybe they'd be interested in this. And maybe this is what I should be doing because this seems to matter to them. Now, if enough people start feeding back on topics you're hearing again and again, those are massive clues, obviously, which we can easily ignore and just trip over and not really recognize as a clue. So yeah, it's being very aware in conversations, and get out there, make hundreds of visits, calls, contacts, even if they're not going to yield anything, because they all yield information, feedback, feelings, emotional intelligence, and things you can then feed back into your own processes. Believe me, it really, really, really works. It really does. So that was great, Linda. Thank you. And I'm not sure if anyone else has anything to add. Stuart may or may not be able to remember the philosopher that said, listen more than you speak. I'm trying to remember who it was. It was Plato or Socrates or somebody of that nature.
We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak.
There you go.
It was Epictetus.
Ah, there you go. So,
great presentation today, man. Just what I needed to hear, as usual with all your presentations. I'll work backwards a little bit. Yeah, you know, you were talking about when you're presenting and trying to reach people and strike those chords within other people, and I use that word intentionally as a pun, if you would, right? Because we're talking about resonance just a moment ago, and earlier you talked about the law of vibration, right? Or the principle of vibration, and that concept of sympathetic vibration, where you know, you strike a chord literally in somebody, right? Or you put out a certain energy or a certain vibration out into the world, right? And then that strikes other people, and then they vibrate at a similar level, and that's the concept of resonance. When we first started on this journey a couple of years ago, I have a friend, client, who works for Apple, and right when we started on this whole Zoom journey, and nobody knew what Zoom was or how to, you know, present or you know, the whole etiquette of how to be on a video chat like this. Apple had hired a woman named Nancy Duarte, and she had written a book called Resonate, and I put the link in the chat. And it's all about putting together presentations that speak to people, and essentially Apple at the time, and every other big company and every other little company now has pretty much followed suit, because everybody's switched to, you know, working from home during COVID, and how to create compelling, engaging presentations to people. And so this book, Resonate, was very cool because it kind of it's a multimedia presentation, so you can kind of read the book, but literally even the ebook has videos, it has you know, images and different things. So it's this multi-sensory presentation, but it actually helped me quite a bit. You know, you were talking about being introvert and extrovert, and kind of, you know, getting out of our comfort zones. And while you might think that I'm a very gregarious, extroverted person, I still consider myself an introvert, right? And I really do have to force myself to, put myself out there. And of course, I spent, the better part of the last 30 years working with groups, having very personal, intimate experiences with people out in the wilderness. And yet I still consider myself an introvert. So I would consider myself an extroverted introvert, but somebody that has pushed myself to the limits and beyond of my comfort zone. And I still remember the early days of being on these calls with you guys. And I would, John would say something that would speak to me, and I would want to make a comment about it, and I would raise my hand or whatever on the Zoom, and I remember shaking and just feeling so scared, and just not wanting to speak and not wanting the camera to be on me or any of that stuff, and just doing it partially because I felt like I had something I wanted to share and I wanted to share it, but but also because I knew that it was an uncomfortable experience for me and that I wanted to sort of get beyond that. And my father was a corporate CEO, and he taught me a lot about public speaking as a young lad. But it's always a challenge. And I remember even in the early days of presenting and doing a couple podcasts a week back in the heyday, year and a half ago, and just feeling terrified every time, and still feeling good about that afterwards, right? And this is where a lot of the mindset, a lot of the, let's say, the Neville Goddard manifestation techniques come into play, the congratulatory experience, and seeing myself after presenting, and having you or John, in my mind's eye, come to me and say, "Oh, a great presentation," and I would feel like I had already done it, and it was already a done deal, and it was already a wonderful experience. And, "Oh, I really got a lot out of that. Thank you," and that helped me tremendously. But anyway, you're talking about networking and engaging with our customers and with our audience. And I feel like for me, again, I built a career around developing strong interpersonal relationships with my guests, even if it was, for a day or a half a day or whatever. And, you had mentioned after 20, 30 years, people are resurfacing and connecting back in the marketplace. I still, on a regular basis, get emails, like at least once a week, from former clients that, "Hey, it's, we came on a trip with you, 10 years ago, and we're coming back into the area, and we'd like to, share another experience with you," kind of thing. And so, no matter what we're doing, and this, for me, this was a service-based industry that I'd been in versus, products, let's say. And of course, I know I was selling a product, and I think that's kind of the next thing that I want to drop with you. But this concept of relationships and how we may not realize it, but if we offer a product or a service that enriches somebody's life in whatever ways, you may not even realize how much you've affected or impacted that person. But then they come back and say, "Hey, I'd like to purchase that again," or "What else do you have?" or whatever that might be. You talked about, customer value proposition, and I remember it as John presented it, and it was still a new concept to me. I think, we learned it as the USP, right? The unique selling proposition. But in my new and recent venture that John was hinting at, I think that the CVP, the value proposition, is a more appropriate way to look at it. But either way, it's about defining what it is that you're offering and what makes your product or service special, different. Why should somebody, buy through you or buy the thing that you're selling? And, you know, in the early days of my service industry, you heard me talk about how I had a competitor, and when I was in my early 20s and I didn't have resources for advertising, and I was just a young entrepreneur, and I was, you know, scared that, you know, somebody else was going to come into my market and put me out of business and all this stuff. And it really prompted me to define what it was that I was really offering and what made the thing that I was doing different than the other guy. And as much as it was a scary moment for me in my career, it was incredibly valuable to be able to go through that process, because then from there it skyrocketed for me, because then all of a sudden I was putting myself out there in the marketplace in a way that was different than I had been previously. And it was all about what makes what I'm doing different. I love how you talked about how we're all a marketplace in and of ourselves. And I immediately thought of, you know, we're all consumers. And I think in order to be a good marketer or seller, it's important to get into that consumer mindset, right? And when you're marketing and you're advertising, it's almost good, you know, it's good to get in the mindset of, well, what if I was being pitched this, or what if I was being marketed to? How would I do it, right? And I always, these things go hand in hand. And I think we're all buyers and we're all sellers. And even when we talk about ideology and philosophy, right, we all are consumers of ideas, and it's not just products and services, right? And this, when you started talking about giving people what they want, I immediately thought, well, okay, so there's a two-part gig to that. One is identifying what people want, and that can be done through market research and trends analysis and all kinds of data crunching and kind of looking at, you know, the marketing landscape out there. And then there's sort of the other half of that, which is telling people what they want, because maybe people don't even know what they want. And, you know, when I started my wilderness guide service, hiking and camping with llamas, I don't think people were out there looking for that. I don't think people even knew it existed, right? And so this comes back to almost the hierarchy of needs. And what are we really selling, right? Because you could be selling a widget or a doodad or a product or a service or whatever it is, but what you're really selling is the emotion or the feeling that is associated with that product or service or doodad or whatever, right? And so Subaru doesn't sell cars, they sell love, right? Or whatever it is. You know, you think about all these brilliant marketing campaigns, those guys fully know that what they're offering, and you know, is the emotion or the state of being that that we all want, right? And the higher up the hierarchy of needs that we go, security, stability, love, relationship, family, health, right? These are the things that are important to us. And I think if we can make that connection between the thing that we're offering and the emotional value that's being associated with it, then not only are we more successful with what we're offering, but then we're actually giving people what they want, right? Because what do people want? That's what they want: love, family, security, stability, health, relationships, right? You know, yeah, okay, I need a can opener, you know, or whatever. You know, but the reality is, it's the higher up that ladder that you climb. And then what else was I going to say? You talked a lot about service, my friend, and I think that's a critical component to anything that we're doing. And I'm reminded all the time. We were reading Bob Proctor's "You Were Born Rich" in book study, and I believe he was a student of Earl Nightingale's, and so he quotes Earl Nightingale quite a bit, who of course was a student of Napoleon Hill. And the thing that I always remember, and I'm grateful to John for turning us on to Earl Nightingale, Strangest Secret, And I'll always remember, your level of success is in direct proportion to your level of service. And, you know, and I talked a little bit about this last night, but I feel like if we just come from a place of doing good things for other people, for the world, for our communities, and that's time in, and that's just being of service to those around us, and being of, you know, offering something that is beyond the product or service that we're offering, and may not even involve a direct level of compensation. But this is where, you know, call it karma tokens or whatever you want, but you do good things in the world, and that comes back to you threefold, tenfold, or whatever. So thanks for that reminder. Great chat today. I'm glad to be here. Team Tuesday, baby. You're muted, brother.
Sorry, I just didn't press the right button there. Yeah, it took me right back. How to debrief on everything you've said there, a massive amount of input. Took me right back, though, to the introvert discussion we had on probably the first few weeks of setting up the group, where a lot of people that you wouldn't expect to say they were introvert actually are, but it's something that we've just got to develop as a tool, putting ourselves out there. We can create a persona for that and go out and just practice, but you have to practice and do it. There's no substitute for learning on the job, being put in situations where you have to do it, and then it becomes part of your comfort zone. So I'd say to anyone that's hesitating, start to do it. Start with small engagements with people and then bigger ones until you feel comfortable in those environments, whether it's a Zoom chat, meetings face-to-face, conferences, presentations, whatever it is. So important. And one of the last things you talked about there, the avatar, when we're creating this avatar and deciding what people want and what it is we're selling and who to, it's not just about pure demographics, and that's what Stuart has alluded to there. It's not just about somebody's age or the town they're from or the country they're from. It's about their feelings and their beliefs and a lot more emotional criteria behind that. So we've got to look further than saying, hey, this avatar is an XYZ-year-old person from this particular area doing this sort of job with these interests. It's a lot more than that. It is about emotion. And I read a similar case to Stuart's case about the llamas, where a lady was running a horse riding learning center, really, and people could come and learn how to ride. But it was okay. But she then decided that actually they turned it into an experience description. Come and have an experience. Come for the weekend and have a whole experience. And the profits and the customer base escalated enormously because they wanted the experience. They weren't just coming to learn how to ride. It's what was behind that and what they were getting out of it. So we're looking deep. We're looking deep into people's feelings and their emotions to see if we can engage them and what it is they really want. It's not the thing that's on the surface, the apparent activity. It's what it's giving them often. So we've all got to get better at that as well. So many things there, but you referred to Resonate. It's a book I know a lot of companies have used, and I've known companies that have used it. Again, it's about telling the story, and that's probably what I'll wrap up with today. But what Stuart was describing to us, what people are doing, particularly people like Apple, are telling a story, and they're actually using the ancient Greek structures sometimes in plays, ancient Greek plays. They're actually going through the motions of telling a story to engage, where there's a hero and a protagonist, and then there's a call to action. So it's literally a story where you're being invited and called to do something at the end of it. So you're quite clear what it is you're being invited to do, and they're encouraging you over the threshold to actually do that. So it's well worth studying this. It's well worth looking at Apple. It's well worth looking at Resonate and these other presentational aids, because they're trying to educate you in how to network and engage with people and appeal to them and get your message across in a better way. And it is a story. It's not just a bunch of facts, a bunch of product characteristics. This is what it does. Here's what's inside the box. This is how much RAM it's got. That is not it. Apple does not stand there and say, we've got more RAM than anyone else, or this is what it does. They do tell you that, and it's there, but they're telling you, they're giving you an experience. You're becoming part of this incredible movement and tribe using their products, and people want to identify with them. because their story is so convincing that people want to actually be seen to be using Apple products, and they're happy to use them and feel part of it. And they'll camp on a pavement for a week on a new launch to get one of these things. Now, how would you feel if you found out that your customers were prepared to camp out for a week just to get their hands on one of the things you were offering? You'd know at that point you created a movement, not just a sales pitch. And that is success. And that's what we're aiming for. So thank you, Stuart. That was enormously powerful and a great summation of a lot of the things we've talked about over the last 18 months or more now. Unless anyone else had any further burning thoughts, as John would put it, I'll probably bring the session to an end at this point, but I hope it was useful. I do think this matters, and I think it could change everybody's fortunes if you put enough energy into it and focus, and as Linda said, emotional intelligence into it, so you're listening. So thank you so much for taking part, and for all of you, Linda, Stuart, John, particularly for all your contributions today. No more sessions tonight, I believe. I think the next session is tomorrow. And then I think Mandy's book club is also on the agenda. So Mandy, I think it's on this week. I'm not sure which book you are in. I'm just looking at the calendar. Mandy, are you on this week?
No, book club's not on this week.
Okay.
I'm taking a break for a while.
Great, don't blame me. So we're going to miss it this week.
Yeah.
But we have got our general session again tomorrow. That's the first thing. So look forward to seeing everybody. Hope you all have a good and productive rest of your day, and do train and put energy into practicing these things as well as your mindset, because you're going to see wonderful things happening if you do. I know that's the case. Thank you all for listening. Great. That was the John Lavenia Success Mastermind group discussion for the 14th June 2022. Goodbye to everybody, and thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.